Welcome to our virtual event, Multi-Organizational Cybersecurity Collaboration, Trends and Innovations in a Mid and to Post-Pandemic World at the Mark O. Hatfield Center for Cybersecurity at Portland State University. This webinar is being recorded, audience members are muted, and your video has been disabled. If you have questions for the panelists, please put them in the chat box. We ask that the chat be kept respectful. We have a staff member monitoring the chat and saving the questions for the Q&A following the panel discussion. We start today with a land acknowledgement. The Hatfield School of Government is the academic home of the Institute of Tribal Government, which is working in ongoing partnership with our sovereign tribal nations. We know that our panelists and attendees today are participating from many different locations. I offer this land acknowledgement from Portland State University. What we now call Portland, Oregon, and at Multnomah County are the traditional lands of the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Clackamas, Cowlitz bands of Chinook, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Molalla, and many other family bands and tribes who made and continue to make their homes along the Columbia and Willamette River. Today, people from these bands have become part of the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, as well as the Chinook Nation and Cowlitz Nation in Washington State. It is important to acknowledge the ancestors of this place and to recognize that we are here because of the sacrifices forced upon them. In acknowledging these communities, we honor their legacy, their lives, and their descendants. The Mark O. Hatfield Center for Cybersecurity is a collaborative partnership between computer sciences and engineering, public affairs and public policy, and business administration. Designated as a national center of academic excellence in cyber research by the National Security Agency and the Department of Homeland Security, the Mark O. Hatfield Center for Cybersecurity strives to make important contributions to regional and national efforts to further cybersecurity expertise and education in ways that complement and enhance national goals and investments. Mitigating the impacts of cyber attacks and building cyber resiliency to our critical infrastructure can only be accomplished with a multi-organizational and collaborative approach across all sectors of public, private, and nonprofit institutions. This is represented by this graphic. The concept will be central to our discussion today. And there's the graphic. Today, we will be using the question and answer feature in Zoom to allow you to ask questions during the event. For our panelists to answer your questions live, we'll also allow you to vote on the questions you most want to answer, so they'll rise to the top of our priority. This webinar is sponsored and made available to you as an attendee for free of charge, thanks to the support of Palo Alto Network. There's a door prize for today's webinar, and I will post a link shortly after the introductions in the chat. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator today, Kim Lamb. Kim is the named account manager, Oregon SLED, Palo Alto Networks, as the founding executive director of the Oregon Health Network, senior manager of government, healthcare, and education for General Communications Incorporated, and now named account manager for Oregon's public sector for Palo Alto Network. Kim has spent the last 20 years of her career invested in the public sector surrounding healthcare, education, workforce, and economic development, emergency and disaster response, access to robust connectivity, and the security of public services and critical infrastructure. In her role at Palo Alto Networks, Kim considers it a privilege to work alongside some of the most impassioned entrepreneurs, educators, public servants, change agents, and engineering talent in the industry. The role provides her the opportunity to co-translate the power of securely designed and implemented technology to community-based solutions that improve the quality of life for all. Thank you, Kim, for being willing to be our moderator. On our panel, we have Rakesh Boba from Oregon State University's Cybersecurity Department. Dr. Rakesh B. Boba has over 15 years of experience in cybersecurity research and education. He is currently an associate professor in the School of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at Kearney Faculty Scholar in the College of Engineering at Oregon State University. He is a co-founder of the Oregon Research and Teaching Security Operations Center, ORTSOC, is a voting member of the Oregon Cybersecurity Advisory Council, OCAC, and serves as the management team of Northwest Cyber Camps. His research interests are in the design of secure and trustworthy network and distributed computer systems, with the current focus on cyber physical critical infrastructure, real-time systems, trustworthy ML, and image privacy. Dr. Boba has co-authored more than 60 peer-reviewed papers in premier conferences and journals in this field and made pioneering contributions to cybersecurity, including the use of cyber physical models for secure analysis tasks into real-time systems, usable privacy for images. Dr. Boba's work was recognized with Best Student Paper Awards multiple times. Over the years, Dr. Boba's research has been supported by DOE, ARPA, and NSF. He obtained his PhD and MS in electrical and computer engineering from the University of Maryland at College Park. He is a member of the IEEE and the ACM. Our other panelist is Scott Carpenter, the CIO for Treasure Valley Community College. Scott Carpenter is Chief Information Officer and part-time instructor for Treasure Valley Community College in Ontario. He has been focused on building enterprise class systems and processes in higher education where limited budgets frequently make such solutions difficult to afford and implement. And at the same time, he has shared his knowledge in the classroom, teaching networking, security courses, and computer science and programming. Welcome, Scott, and thank you for your willingness to be a panelist. And then finally, we have Crystal Hotowi. I practiced too, but I got the panelist bios at the very beginning of the webinar. I'm sorry,
Hot
Crystal. Hotaway, that's right.
No, yeah, the hot way.
Yeah, Hotaway. Thank you, Crystal, for the correction. I really appreciate it. And I'm sorry about that. Crystal comes to us from the Mackay tribe located in Washington State. For 12 years, Ms. Hotaway served as a grants writer for her tribe with a focus on state and federal grants. In addition to her grant writing duties, Ms. Hotaway was also detailed to the Mackay Tribal Broadband Project, which entailed not only a wireless network deployment from concept to construction, but also included negotiations with industry and was active with national, regional, and statewide policy and advocacy groups. In her new role at the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, she will be utilizing her knowledge and skills developed to help administer the newly developed Tribal Broadband Connectivity Program. Welcome and thank you for being a panelist. And with that, and without further ado, I will hand over the stage to Kim Lamb.
Thank you, Brent, for the kind introduction. And thank you, Portland State University, Mark Hatfield's Cybersecurity, Center for Cybersecurity, and for inviting me here today to have this strategic and important discussion. And furthermore, I want to thank each of you who have taken the time to join us here today to hear how several of our federal, state, and local public agencies are innovating and are desiring to collaborate in securely delivering next generation public services. Because the approach to cybersecurity is not unlike what it takes to beat a global pandemic. It takes robust technological innovation. It takes sophisticated communication and intelligence sharing across diverse stakeholder groups. It takes real-time new best practices and playbook development and a shared desire to protect our very way of life for the generations to come. So it's not about if or when or who should have a robust cybersecurity posture. Every country, state, organization, and person or citizen requires a secure means to access public services. And that is why more federal funding and policy coordination is being developed to advance multi-organizational cybersecurity consortiums to effectively meet the advancing cyber threats that continue to make international headlines. So let's get started and hear firsthand from those in the front lines of collaboration innovation. Time permitting, I'm going to ask the 3 questions of the panelists for them to respond to and with each other in 3 separate rounds. And at the conclusion of that section, then we'll open it up to all of you to ask questions to the panelists and to hopefully open up even greater dialogue. So I want to emphasize that the panelists and I consider and desire this event to be a learning experience and opportunity for all of us. So please make the most of this webinar by offering your questions and comments in the Q&A, like Brent said, so that we can all make this as engaging and meaningful for you as possible. Okay, the first round to my revered panelists and peers, it's time for you. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself and provide some background for all of us as to what your perspective, your unique perspective is, and what you're desiring to bring to the conversation today, and what you're currently working on or desiring to do as it relates to how you and or your organization is innovating or even reinventing yourselves with new cybersecurity collaboration models. So I thought I'd start with you, Rakesh, if that's okay.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, no, not a problem. I can get us started. Thank you, and thanks to Brent and the PSU team for inviting me on this panel. I think, and I apologize to Brent for that long bio. I thought it was just going to be print material, so I didn't edit it for length. Am I still here? I see some frozen screen. I just want to make sure you're still able to hear me. Okay, yeah, just 2 sentences after Brent's introduction. So he mentioned my security research focus and some of the other things I'm doing, but for this conversation, what I want to talk about are what Oregon State is doing in terms of workforce challenge, and also cybersecurity service needs in the community. So we are launching Oregon Research and Teaching Security Operations Center that, if you can see behind me, if I can move out, I'm stuck in a car on the road. Sorry about that. I can't move much. But yeah, the idea is, so since coming to Oregon, while I kept up my research portfolio, but I got engaged in workforce development activities around the state. Cybersecurity workforce shortage is a huge problem, especially given the increasing cyber threats to pretty much businesses and organizations at all levels. So we see a need for work-ready, skilled graduates in this space. And ArtSoc is one effort. There are many efforts around the state, and I'm very happy to know about some of those and be involved in some of those. But this is one effort by Oregon State to sort of create ready skill, students with ready skills, at the same time serving local organizations that otherwise would not be able to afford cybersecurity services. So I'll stop there and let other panelists chime in.
Great. Well, maybe we can hand it over to you, Crystal, at the most north, how do you say that? The most northern western coast tip of the lower 48 at the Makah tribe in northern Washington.
Yes, so we are the most northwestern tip of the lower contiguous states. So you can't, to get to me, you find a road and drive until you run out of road and you'll get to me. As Kim said, yes, I am located on the very tip of Washington State. It's where the Pacific Ocean meets the Strait of Juan de Fucas. We're also nestled up against the Olympic Mountains. And so it's gorgeous. It's a beautiful area, but it's also rural and remote. We're also a tribe. And so that puts us on the fringe of the fringe. And so for years, I was working on all of these different issues as far as internet connectivity goes for our tribe, for our community, for our schools, for our clinic, for our tribal government, just to function. And so, you know, I started in 2013 on this project, and I just left the tribe in early May of this year. So I've been gone for only a month from the tribe, and
Only professional.
in that time, right? I'm still located here. But you know, it's these issues that we've been having to deal with. There's so many, it's so complex and it's so convoluted. It goes, you know, industry, and there's no real incentive for them to build out to us. And then it's also getting a hold of FCC licenses and spectrum. And so I spent a lot of time doing policy advocacy, because that
We have, due to the very nature of Crystal's location, we do have connectivity issues with her. So we were challenging that with the group earlier with trying to troubleshoot and give her some solutions. So we might, as listeners, need to, when she's live, give her the space to give the moments and her voice when it can be heard. But I'm sure she's frustrated on the backside there. But yeah, amazing work as she's been doing, working on the broadband project, and then also bringing in a possibility of a sovereign stock as a service to again address the same things that Rakesh was talking about with the workforce development, economic development, a way to sustain and bring in new types of community solutions, and then sharing those with other tribes on the outside. So hopefully I spoke well for her and on her behalf, and we can find a way in. Here she says she's back. Crystal, I did a handoff for you. I did your spiel.
Thank you. So I apologize. I'm working on a VPN, and it is the network connection to my computer is unstable at times. It also, I need to apologize because my network tends to work better if I'm not on camera. So anyways, I go ahead and move on to the next.
Yeah, I think I did a good job of talking about the transition from your broadband project to stocks as a service and workforce development and all the things that you're looking at, you know, security as a means to best serve your community.
Definitely.
So out to Eastern Oregon, way Eastern Oregon with Scott.
Hi, everybody. So as Kim says, I am out in Eastern Oregon, as far east as you can get in Oregon. We're about an hour from Boise, Idaho. We are a small community college out here on the eastern part of the state. And so we really struggle with, you know, trying to recruit people to come over to this side of the state. And the people that we do get, they have a tendency to get swallowed up by the Boise, Idaho area. So for us, we are very interested in working with all kinds of partners to figure out, you know, how can we best serve our college and the people around us, you know, with expertise in cybersecurity. TVCC is kind of seen as one of the leaders in the valley over here, you know, so a lot of businesses, you know, grocery stores and places like that look to us as to have expertise. So we are always in the mode of trying to figure out partnerships of how we can collaborate together, not just with education, but with other organizations, because the talent pool is very small in the eastern part of the state. And so we are exploring lots of things. Part of what we're doing is trying to train our own. So we've started our own academy here at the college, and we're about 2 years in and finally starting to see some results of the people we're training, and they're finding jobs over here, and a lot of the organizations are thankful for our program. And we hope to keep exploring more partnerships and figuring out how we can all deal with this great big issue of cybersecurity together.
Excellent, excellent. So I'll move on to our second question, which was our first question outside of introductions, is really, what is the greatest epiphany that the pandemic has uncovered for you as it relates to your view of cybersecurity for the public sector? Would any one of you like to go first? Or would you like me to call on you?
That's a Scott. I'd go first.
Okay.
So for us, one of the things that we have noticed is that, as I was saying before, not just for the college, but for businesses, people in the home, the pandemic forced a lot of us to work from home. And, what I saw, for TVCC and the local businesses around us, that we had to do a lot of support for people, not just on the workplace anymore. And so we ended up helping a lot of people with their home office. And a lot of people did not have the expertise to deal with that. So we stepped in and helped as much as possible, not just for our employees and students, but with anybody, in our local area, to help figure out, how could they get connectivity? There's options, some of them good, some of them bad. What could we do to make their environment secure? And we did the best that we could with the knowledge that we have and the skill force that we have. So we felt, a lot of pressure, like our customer base really just grew, and everybody was in this together. And it was kind of, nice to have, people talking about, cybersecurity in our world, where in the past, everybody just kind of took that for granted and didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to it. But then as the pandemic hit, it was a common subject that was talked about a lot. And we really saw, the community come together and all work together to figure out how to make the best working environment, no matter where you were at.
Excellent point. No doubt that the workforce, the geography of who you need to service has changed overnight, no doubt. Kesh or Crystal, you have any thoughts on that? How the pandemic has uncovered, from the public sector, any epiphanies?
Yeah, sorry, I had to turn off my video for a second. I'm back now. Yeah, I think Scott touched on a number of issues. Working from home changed the way we think about cybersecurity. And one of the things, I think for us, at least, the big thing was that we initially thought, running a SOC, a student-powered SOC with remote participants might not be feasible. So as we are planning out this ArtSOC rollout, we were mostly thinking about it as an in-person experience for our students. But now the pandemic has taught us that we can actually do this remotely as well. So that was a big positive outcome for us. The other thing is, in pandemic, we're all working from home, but the attacks don't stop. So, our SOC, not ArtSOC, but our OSU SOC has been dealing with the usual stuff, sometimes even at a higher frequency than normal. So, and they've been pretty successful in functioning remotely as well. So I think from that perspective, our thinking is that two things. One, we can do this remotely. This might be feasible to provide services while working remotely, and maybe even train students while working remotely. And the second one is, with a large population working from home, there are new security challenges. Scott already alluded. We need to worry about security in the attack surface kind of tends to increase depending on your home security. I mean, VPNs are a part of the solution, but not always the solution. So you need to tweak your monitoring rules and such for remote access and so on. So I think those are some technical issues there, but from a community perspective, I think this has just showed what's possible with remote offerings. Oh, one last thing I want to add. I think we always knew, and that's probably how this gravitation towards RSOC happened over the years. But a former state CISO used to say that, for cybersecurity, especially for public entities, it's a community health model, because any one of us being, cyber secure doesn't really do all that much if others are vulnerable, because we're all interconnected. This kind of brings the same, if the boundaries of the organization change with remote work, like I said, VPNs kind of make you feel you're at home, but you still need to make sure that overall, your employees and community members know how to protect themselves against cyber attacks, because they know how to jump any kind of gaps you think you have created, whether it's air gaps or boundaries and so on. Attacks tend to jump over them.
That's true, and that's that attack surface. Moving to the cloud has been a big. The public sector has done a lot of resisting to that, and I've seen a lot of that shift due to sheer need. And that was a trajectory that the world's going on, but it really catapulted public services and the public industry into that, and where they weren't necessarily ready and prepared. But then with those tools, they were able to go, oh, look what we can do. And then that light bulb goes off and goes, well, again, that bricks and mortar thinking, moving on into citizens are everywhere and not necessarily in the building, and our workforce is everywhere. That's just, it seems obvious when you're looking and watching it, but when you're in it and providing those services, it's significant to the shift of how you run your organization and business and plan and find your relevancy and, all that. So those are excellent points. So Crystal, I saw your mute go off. Your turn.
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, the greatest epiphany was that humans are a versatile animal. We were able to, we had no choice. We had to go digital overnight. And that meant digital everything: school and appointments and work and commerce and interactions. It was all digital. So, I mean, first and foremost, that was the biggest epiphany, is that, we can adjust, we can adapt, and we can overcome. Secondly, I think the pandemic highlighted and emphasized the absolute necessity for secure operations. Even operations that before the pandemic were considered secure needed to be revamped and redone. So the absolute need for infrastructure and for support programs, the absolute need for construction and sustainability beyond construction. Those are all huge needs as far as development and employment go. And to be able to do that, with given the get-go with security in mind. I mean, utilizing security as the foundation of your network. That was what was important. So I don't know if my audio is messing up.
It is. I'm so sorry, because your comments, and by the way, listeners, your comments are just so profound. And I feel it's like a metaphor that, from the tribal experience and message and just getting it through. And it's, again, underscores the importance of all of us making sure we all rise up together, right? For this, it's a team sport, cybersecurity. So, we're not all safe until we're all safe and secure and have access. So we'll keep trying with you, Crystal, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe even Q&A, you can bring in some points for me I can raise on your behalf as we adjust and adapt to the challenges that we have.
There is a question in the Q&A.
Yes, I did see that. That was great. So we have a great question. COVID has highlighted some disparities in connectivity. And there are several high-profile initiatives to increase broadband access in areas with limited or no service. What can public sector organizations do to ensure their jurisdictions can become connected at these minimum speeds for digital success, while also building in security and privacy from the start? I'm sure Crystal would have a lot of points here, but.
Yeah, I can. Thank you, Rebecca, for the question. I think this has indeed highlighted connectivity issues, and I'm not an expert on this. I think Crystal would give you maybe some more insight, but even in Oregon and even before COVID, I think the Oregon State recognized the need for connectivity and worried about the digital gap. So they have started, I think, the Oregon Broadband, or Oregon Link, I think it's called now.
Link Oregon.
Link Oregon. Yeah, thank you, Kim. Yeah, it's under the Broadband Council. So they have this Link Oregon project that is trying to provide fiber connectivity to areas that are currently underserved commercially with internet connectivity. And that, I believe, and I'm not always on top of this, I think they are laying out fiber and getting stuff out now. I mean, they're executing on it now. So the connectivity will increase. One concern with this increased connectivity is that suddenly, if we just add broadband without building in security and privacy from the start, we are just sort of expanding the reach of cyber attacks to our communities. So Link Oregon actually has been thinking about cybersecurity issues, and PSU, Oregon State, and I think UFO are all partners in this exercise or in this Link Oregon effort. And Link Oregon and we are in conversations to see if ArtSoc can help with some of their cybersecurity issues. So those conversations are happening as the physical fiber is being laid out. Crystal, maybe she'll come back and add, but I want to add that Crystal has gone through the same, like a connectivity project at her tribe, and I think they've realized cybersecurity is a key issue for them, and that's the reason I think they're pursuing their sovereign security operations center as well, because providing connectivity without cybersecurity is can be quite risky to the communities, and I think education is key. And Scott pointed out, in some of these communities, tech expertise isn't available, so we are working through our extension services to see if some of that, if there are ways we can address it as well. So I think Kim pointed out earlier, for public sector organizations and also in states where we have a big gap between rural and urban areas, collaboration and among public sector organizations is a key way to address many of these challenges. And in some sense, educational institutions are coming together to work, and PSU, TVCC, Oregon State, and others, Mount Hood, are thinking through some of these challenges, are trying to work together to address some of them. Obviously, we are not we won't be able to solve all of them, but I think workforce development and trying to push expertise onto the edges is something we can try to solve. Yeah.
Scott, you any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and from another perspective, what I saw was in our area, connectivity is very much in demand, and a lot of people looked at cell service, and hotspots to try to get connectivity during this pandemic. And in a small town like ours, it didn't take long for even the cell services to be saturated. and pretty soon they were having their own connectivity issues. So we saw, quite a few people pulling into our parking lots, even though the college was closed, and getting in there and working from their cars in there. And, we weren't really using our bandwidth because we were closed and all of our users were gone. So we had a lot of bandwidth available. And, we opened it up a little bit to people getting, in the parking lots, from cars and stuff. But that also drove, another initiative for us. Well, how do we secure that? You just don't want to open up your network to everybody in the town on there. So that's where a lot of our, partnerships, came into play, that we were helping businesses and community members, solve this problem together. And I don't think it will go away, as the pandemic, starts to fade away. I hope that this collaboration still continues on, because you need to work together as a town, right, to be able to provide that high speed of connectivity coming in. Not one organization by themselves can do it. And there's lots of places out there like the Link Oregon that are good people to partner with that could possibly make that happen in your area.
We have another question that came up. If the speakers know of any states that are using multi-organizational cybersecurity resistancy, what was the, not residency, resilience, that are good and are a good example of what to do? Are there good examples of including small public entities? Any thoughts there?
South Dakota?
Yeah.
Doesn't South Dakota have
a North Dakota? Exactly. North Dakota, I do know of North Dakota, state of North Dakota has kind of built a very revolutionary SOC as a service, but from the state perspective for all agencies and addressing the infrastructure as well, and then collaboration across states and in terms of sharing that data. So those things I'm seeing, also from my role, from the need itself, from public entities, rural entities, the desire to do it by yourself. Well, it's been proven you can't. It's a team sport. There's not enough resources, not enough money, not enough knowledge, so it's really, how do we quickly combine, follow those thought leaders, figure out how to do it better. And those things are happening across the state of Oregon for sure. And I definitely know as a result of the efforts with North Dakota, the state of North Dakota, and the incredible progress they've made, and encouraging that sort of collaboration, again, from state, local, education, utilities. And again, that addresses, and again, I think that in terms of broadband connectivity and technology is, again, networking used to be on the, cybersecurity came after, and now we're at a point where, again, how are we looking at our networks? How do we, broadband capacity need is always going to go through, but how can we use the cloud and other technology to reduce that impact, and that service and that experience? So they're kind of different levels that are going on at the same time too, that are critical factors. So I don't know if that answered your question, Sarah. But I should probably, unless somebody else, are you ready do you have something else to say?
Yeah, just I think getting back to Sarah's question on multi-organizational initiatives in the public sector, North Dakota, you mentioned is a great example. The others not in the region, but I am aware of, are the OmniSoc in the Midwest, hosted at Indiana. They're multiple universities, and they're big universities, and they're not, they're relatively big. They have enough resources, and they still felt the need that each individual institution cannot put in the investment needed for cybersecurity. So they pool their resources into one SOC. I think for that region, a couple of other examples are emerging that way. But one of the things with cybersecurity, there's two things: the community model because of the connectivity, and the second thing is the cost and the shortage. The other thing I think you mentioned, Kim, because of the increased connectivity, I think I tend to look at cybersecurity as brakes on a car. The faster the car you want to have, the better your brakes should be. So the more the bandwidth you want to have in terms of connectivity, you better have good cybersecurity capabilities in your organization as well. So in that sense, that they go hand in hand in some sense. Yeah.
Love that analogy. All right, we might need to switch over to the next question now, if that's okay with everybody. What are the greatest hurdles you've each faced that you see our public agencies facing and needing to overcome to effectively secure our citizens and our critical infrastructure?
Ooh, can I go first? Is my audio okay?
Yes, go while it is.
All right, yeah, let's just dive right in. First and foremost, with that, it's our training. It's getting the fleet of people that you need in place in order to accomplish that goal of securing people, securing networks. That is really, we need a lot of workforce development as far as this.
Okay, I'm going to ask her also to, when she gets broken up in this, is to put her thoughts in the Q&A, kind of keep her thinking going. Hopefully that's the way we can keep her voice up front.
Yeah, also, or in the chat, yeah.
Sure. So Scott and Rakesh, greatest hurdles.
Yeah, I think to continue on where Crystal was going is the cost of cybersecurity is one thing, and then the skill set to go with it, and getting that in your area. That those are some difficult challenges to have. The other piece of it is also educating people about some of the terminology and what does cybersecurity really mean. It's not just about saying, hey, I got to go get a firewall. There's a lot of pieces involved in that. And most people don't understand all of those components and where your data might live and what resources you got to have available to be able to monitor it and protect it. And, that comes at a cost, and it also comes with a skill set that is not very widely out there in the world right now. And so you read a lot about that in the news, that lots of cybersecurity positions that are vacant on there, and it's only going to keep growing as things go. So everybody's going to be competing for this expertise, and those are going to be some major hurdles that we're going to have to overcome. I think we can overcome them. We just definitely are going to have to be innovative at finding some solutions for how we deal with that.
Yeah, I echo both Crystal's and Scott's. I think the biggest hurdle is shortage of skilled workforce. And even when there is, enough people, public organizations or public sector entities, Oregon State is big. Think it feels like relatively we have more resources, but our networks are also large. The assets that we need to protect are also large. So we need a larger team than maybe other organizations, and it's hard to hire people with the right skill set for this size. Many private companies know this, and even when we're able to find, Scott alluded to this earlier, it's hard to compete with private sector in terms of retaining those skilled workers. Being a public entity, we typically are not able to compete at private sector salaries and such. So it's really hard to retain folks. I think this is a common problem that everybody will face: shortage of people, shortage of resources, especially in the public sector. And that's why collaboration, I think, is multi-organization collaboration is a way to address this problem. Apart from developing workforce, which, so ARTSOC, the idea of ARTSOC stems from this very question, right? How do we have enough skilled people, in, how do we protect this large resource? So the idea is that while training the students, we can create a service that's affordable and for other public sector entities. So we're trying. We hope that this will be a part of the solution, but it's a huge challenge. I think Crystal hit it. Workforce development is the key, but collaboration, I think, can mask some of those issues together. I think that's one way to proceed. Yeah.
That's astute. I like that. Well, yeah, absolutely. I think the other thing, actually, to make a plug for PSU is with their Center for Cybersecurity is their focus on bridging the gap between technology and industry to policymakers in state and local governments, and that knowledge gap for that very workforce challenge, right? For the policymakers that are needing to look forward, and they need to be educated, they need to, and how do you do that? How do you bridge that in real time? So often the technology is in front of the policymakers, and then they're playing catch up with the budgets and everything like that. And that is huge for public sector, for the people sitting in your seats. Even if you're aware, the whole system and the engine of government behind you isn't stakeholder engagement and all that. So I think that type of innovation is a whole other level when we just think of just technology or the people, but it's also the surrounding stakeholder community that is part of our ecosystem of all of our critical infrastructure, excuse me. So I really applaud the vision of PSU, and they're the only university in the country that is taking that sliver of that gap that affects the whole. But again, many slivers to fill to be able to improve that. But that's important. Crystal, I'm trying to keep an eye on chat features for you if you have comments you'd like to share too, and or Scott, if you had any other thoughts. I can move on to the next question. Are we good? All right, well, this is our final round of questions. Is what do you find is the greatest challenge in educating leadership, period? Just the concept on the need to prioritize cybersecurity, moving it from an expense line item to a critical infrastructure discussion. I know you've all had to battle that and educate leadership in a variety of roles. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I can start. So, yeah, we kind of started talking about this already, and that's just, educating people about the world of cybersecurity, and understanding the different components of it. It's, in the medical world, right? We understand when a person is sick, and we can understand things about, if they have the flu, the pneumonia, or something else, but in the cybersecurity world, we don't understand what some of those terminologies are. And, it needs to be educated, to people in charge, to all organizations, to understanding, what are some of the different pieces, that we are trying to attempt with protecting our data and protecting our users, protecting our network. When we go to see line items, on budgets and what we're writing checks for, it would be nice to know what are those things. And everybody sees cybersecurity as a big line item, right? Oh, that costs a lot. But when you start breaking it down, you can see that you're covering different areas of your network. So it is challenging to educate people, because it's like its own language and its own on there, but definitely doable. And I think that the world, from end users all the way up to the leadership, have an interest in this, with all of the recent things that have been happening in the news, that they all have an interest in understanding the components of it. And so I think it's very important to be, educating the different parts and pieces of what it takes to have a complete cybersecurity protection plan. It's not just, go out and buy one thing or write one check and be done.
Crystal just made a comment that was great. She said the conversation is very technical. So getting leadership comfortable with the concepts and understanding those concepts of networking and security is important. It's easy for technical people to get into the weeds, but because it's so detailed, but it takes time and a resource that we're all short on. Which also plugs into PSU's kind of plan to incorporate cybersecurity just into all of the degree program. So it's not just a technical conversation, it's secure urban development. It's secure, everything else in policy making, bringing security just into there's a role for it everywhere.
Yeah, I would like to I think it's important to education is key. I think given the security threats, more and more leadership is aware the risks of not investing in cybersecurity, right? Or not making those investments. But I think cybersecurity suffers from this aspect that probably other areas in which leadership has to make investment decisions in don't suffer as much as, if you're making investments and everything is going well, you don't notice it, right? Only when something goes bad is when it comes up, on their radar. So if I'm investing, let's say $500,000 every year and nothing is happening, no attacks, I mean, somebody has to educate the leadership that that's a good thing, and nothing is happening because we're investing in this, right? So when things are going well, nobody appreciates the value of the job the cybersecurity team is doing for your company, right? In some sense, it's underappreciated effort. What I'm trying to get at is it's not easy to quantify the risks that an organization is facing. Like, it's maybe possible. And I think you're right, Kim, in addressing this gap. There might needs to be more expertise in this. Businesses make all kinds of decisions based on uncertainty, and in other areas, there has been this advancements where they're able to, deal with this. In cybersecurity, I feel like there is some business school processes or risk assessment stuff that have come about, but it's still a very nascent field. Cybersecurity insurance is new, right? I mean, they're just coming in. That's part of the puzzle, because once insurance businesses come, they actually push the envelope on that risk assessment, the costing, of not doing something. I think, that'll help us move forward as well. The biggest thing for me, I think, to communicate to the leadership is, first, you can't do it overnight. So it's not like, oh, I invest a big amount now and cybersecurity problem is solved. It's a process. It takes time. It needs continued investment and education of your employees and such to keep the organization secure. It's not like I build a fence and now I'm secure, right? Perimeter defenses are not the solution. This also reminds me of a joke that once a military general said. Is he said, my boss figured out how to shut me up, because whenever I go for investments, he asks me, okay, this seems like a bottomless pit. I keep investing in cybersecurity and you keep coming back. He's like, just tell me how much more I need to invest so this problem is solved. And then he's stumped. I mean, we cannot say if you just invested X additional amount, we are good, right? That's that's the challenge, because a business leader is looking for, okay, what's my risk here, and what's my return on investment, and how much I need to invest to stay this problem is under control, and it's very hard to quantify that. And the second thing, in terms of making this investments or companies in the past, and I've seen this over 10-15 years of my association with critical infrastructures, there'll be a cybersecurity standard and your focus is all on compliance with the standard, right? You spend a lot of money just to be compliant, not necessarily improving your security posture, right? But over time with education, that changes, but it doesn't happen overnight. Whenever you have a cybersecurity standard imposed on any entities, especially, I mean, these are typically imposed on public sector entities. I'm aware of the energy sector. When the NERC-CIP rules first came out, people weren't happy, but then they figured out, hey, they can comply with it. It's expensive and painful, but then the focus becomes on compliance. And then you really have to educate the leadership to say, this is just a baseline, right? You know, and complying with it doesn't always necessarily mean you're secure. You have to go above and beyond, right? It's time consuming. I think Crystal hit it. It's time consuming. It's a process. It takes time. And I think having initiatives like PSUs in training people to talk about to policyholders, I think is important. Involving business schools to be able to do this risk assessment and provide decision science to the leaders is important. And I think these are happening now.
That's great. We got a comment from Dr. Yeshalata of the Center for Cybersecurity. He said, Dr. Roba commented on the public health approach to cybersecurity, and can the panel expand on this concept and specifically how small institutions, public, tribal hospitals fit into the cybersecurity ecosystem that he has also often called it the soft underbelly of cybersecurity.
Yeah, and I think, Kim, thank you. I want to see if Scott or Crystal want to take a shot before before I shared some thoughts. But
Yeah, it's a challenging one. You know, we're all learning as we go through this. You know, that it's a difficult task. I think it comes back for me as educating, you know, understanding, you know, the parts and the pieces on there. You know, that without understanding, you know, that, hey, we're going to spend some dollars that protects X, you know, and spend some different dollars to do some different X. That goes along with that risk assessment. You know, it's just going to be a never-ending battle. That, hey, you're going to have to look at, hey, the cost for things, right, go towards these different pieces of, hey, how are we you know, protecting the different slices of an organization. That's about the best I could come up with.
Crystal was stating, I feel it's really towards the sharing of resources, particularly with cybersecurity. So maybe like the shared SOC services, or, you know, those types of sharing. How do you, and also, and that kind of goes into, I'm seeing some cost comments come in, and David Waffle asked, do you have any ideas of how to spread the cost of cybersecurity across all parts of an organization in order to support the investments? And that it is so foundational, you know, that's the point. And how to layer that back into models that haven't considered that before, as we're at that juncture, right?
yeah, I would like to echo Crystal's and Scott's, going back to Birol's comment. You know, federal government, you know, is invested in cybersecurity over the last 10, 15 years, and you know, they have the resources. State governments, especially at the local level, municipal governments, county governments, city governments, they don't have as many resources, school districts and such. And I think what Birol is alluding to is we are finding out that those are now soft targets for people. And I think this community health model comes from the perspective, yeah, I cannot, you know, maybe attack a federal government. I mean, they're happening, but they're more sophisticated very easily. But the federal government is in the end connected to the state government systems and, you know, city government systems. And same thing with state governments, they're connected to local government systems. So I think in the public sector, leaving these connected networks unprotected or not having enough investments is a huge risk. And I think there is, you know, a recognition of this. I think Birol is alluding to this, right? There is a recognition of this among experts and some policymakers, but I don't know if it's been figured out how to address this, right? There needs to be some resources provided to these entities, but even if resources are provided, some entities may not be able to effectively utilize those resources, lack of expertise in the area and so on. So I think shared infrastructure, shared skills, right? You know, forming communities of practice that come together, I think is important. And that's one of the goals of this effort that Birol from PSU and OSU are trying to lead within Oregon. The other aspect, or another perspective on this is, again, I think goes back to David's question as well. I mean, I could invest a ton of money on the brakes, but till I use them, I don't know the value of those brakes. If I never have to use them, I'm like, why am I spending this much money on this braking technology, right? So I think, I don't know if there are easy ways from an organization perspective to spread the cost. Typically, cybersecurity becomes a tax that the central entity in the organization imposes on the business units or something, right? But getting the buy-in that this is necessary for all of us is not a straightforward. It's not as straightforward to do. So I think that's the key. Even now, for example, we know states do provide sensors, monitoring sensors to cities and government for free. I know Oregon does provide some sensors for cities to monitor the networks, but not all city governments are able to take advantage of it. Lack of expertise, sometimes, sometimes lack of trust, right? We don't want the feds monitoring our stuff. These issues come from a lot of history, but in the face of cyber attacks, I think we need to find ways to collaborate and get over those kind of trust issues, sometimes among public organizations.
I think some other things to look at too is, it is really hard to break it down, the cost in, say, each area has to pay this much, because each area is a little different, so, dealing with even within the community college here at TVCC, we've got, athletics department that's a little different than the bookstore department, and sometimes that can require a little different level of security on what we're doing, where bookstores are dealing with financial transactions and athletics are worried about streaming video. They both need to be protected, and we have to watch those entities of the college, because we don't want to create back doors for the bad guys to get in. So it really is a shared cost across all of them, but they are a little different on each of them, which also makes it tough for the lack of talent that we have, to be able to do all of that work.
I'm thinking about the kind of a different angle of also the role that cybersecurity, while it's a cost and it's an effort and it's considered the police in an organization, so to speak, it gets that rap. It also has a role too, I got to think, in terms of really improving the experience, the user experience, the value of an organization, the way to differentiate that organization and be more scalable and viable, given if used with the right resources and with the knowledge behind that. I'm just curious if you guys had any thoughts on how you've seen those kind of conversations in cybersecurity with the user experience benefiting or not your conversation.
I think, Kim, there is a joke, right? This is recorded, but I think it's a well-known thing that, within an organization.
Not against me, is it?
No. Within an organization, typically the most, I shouldn't say, disliked people tend to be lawyers and cybersecurity people, right? Because we are telling them no for things that they want to do. I think from a user experience perspective, cybersecurity does tend to impose certain restrictions on behavior and how you do things and so on. And it always has been a challenge on how to motivate users to follow good hygiene and follow these things. People, that's because I think in the beginning, a lot of cybersecurity focus was on technology and and I suffered this in the past, being a tech person, this is the obvious way to do it. But as I, see more and more experience in this area, usability issues are key. If you cannot solve them, no cybersecurity technology will get deployed or used correctly. And there is no point saying users are not using it correctly, right? Or they're not doing the right thing. It just means you haven't designed the technology to blend into their workflow, into the way they tend to do things. And doing this is very hard from a technical perspective. Is not always easy. So I think awareness is key among user population if you want to get their buy-in, right? And I think organizations are now spending the resources for that, right? Otherwise, it used to be a battle between typically the users and the security enforcers, or you say the police of the organization. And I really think, I go back to this analogy, I think you should get people to think of cybersecurity as the brakes in a car, keeping them safe and allowing them to go faster maybe, but more safely. And I think we haven't figured out a good way to sort of make this mental connection that cybersecurity are like brakes in my vehicle. I really need it. I think over time we have taught people to do defensive driving, and maybe there is an analogy of trying to teach people to do defensive behaviors in their interactions with the cyberspace, right? I mean, that's not an easy problem. I think as I'm saying it, but I think that's, if we can get those two things working, I think we'll see a lot of progress, because cybersecurity is not always about technology. Actually, it's not only about technology. I think not always. That's the key, right? It's people.
Correct.
And processes play a huge role.
Exactly. Well, and actually, I think that's a good tie into another question I had in your communities of practice, the topic of collaboration. For each of you, who would you like to work with or see as natural partners to collaborate with better, that you're not? Like the dream organization that if you could, you would love to integrate that with, to be able to provide better services for your citizens and stakeholders. Dream statement.
I don't know if it's a statement or not, but I know for me that I'm definitely wanting to work with, other organizations and other people in my role. It seems like the bad guys out there work really well together to spread the information that, that there's holes in access to systems. They're quick to let everybody know. I would like to see, us, have the same network. I want the professionals to be able to share information quickly, and let them know, hey, someone is trying this, or there's a vulnerability here. I don't want to read about it in the news, a day later. I want to be, on ground zero, working on it right away, from the positive side of it. So I want to try to beat the bad guys that are out there and working together. I want to work together with other professionals, to have a quicker response on things that we're seeing, floating around with the zeros and ones that are out there on the network.
Well said.
I think from my perspective, both with and without the OSU hat, is, there has been an effort to create a statewide center of excellence for Oregon, and I think we are sort of making progress towards it. So as an entity to share knowledge, share expertise, maybe have some shared services. this vision was created, about 3-4 years ago out of, the SB 90 bill that came about and the preceding effort going into that. I would really like to see that happen and OSU plugging into that, that collaboration, statewide collaboration. The more we've been thinking and talking about it over the years, there are many facets of that really will help our citizens and our communities in terms of cybersecurity. Benefits in workforce development, benefits in improving cybersecurity posture for our organizations, benefits in bringing expertise to the community. So I think there's a lot of positives to that, and I really am hoping that would come to fruition in some part, and we are working together, as I mentioned. Hopefully that will happen. Now that we discovered our partners in Makah tribe are also trying to achieve some similar goals, would love to partner with them and share our experiences and learn from their experiences. Maybe go visit them after post-pandemic, see what they're able to do. So I'm excited. There are a lot of initiatives that are now taking, some of them have been going on for a while. Some of them are popping up now and blooming. So I think I'm looking forward to the next few years to be very exciting as we put these puzzle pieces together and see what we can achieve.
So for the audio video recording, Crystal said that this new job for her feels like a dream, that she's getting to use her knowledge to make a difference for other tribal communities by providing funding to accomplish the construction and digital inclusion projects, which of course are tied to more and more cybersecurity, secure broadband networks and services for those communities. So I would agree. I feel the same way about, in my role of, I get the opportunity to walk around and meet all of you and PSU and Scott and this incredible innovation going across the state and kind of pollinate, make sure you're all talking and sharing if you're not, because you're all so busy doing what you're doing. But I would echo the confidence and enthusiasm for what's happening in the region here and even cross borders across Oregon and Washington and more. And I see more in those discussions similar to North Dakota. And North Dakota is again what Scott was talking about, was sharing that intelligence that no one state or organization can know it all. You can't have enough resources. So this really will be a organized team sport. And those things are happening. And then aligning that then with federal funding, I wish Dr. Yeshilada was on the phone call to talk about again more about how the NSA and other organizations are looking at funding to fund your initiatives with and requiring that public-private industry and cross-state coordination and organization to encourage that alignment. So there's not a lot of silos and going on that, and that sharing of intel is central to the designs of what it is that everyone's doing. And that's never been done before. So again, sometimes in hard times, that's where the greatest innovation occurs, right? If everything was great, we wouldn't be doing anything.
Yeah, I think, Kim, we should thank you and efforts like yours, where we are keeping our blinders, trying to do our day jobs, and just pulling out from our those and sort of putting us in together. The statewide Center of Excellence talks did that. Everybody is doing things, but are unaware of each other's work, and I think these kind of conversations are helping. Another epiphany from COVID and not cybersecurity related is that we really don't need to meet in person to exchange ideas. I mean, we used to look forward to these Oregon-wide meetings of interested parties on how to do these things, and we're like, where do we do this? I think people gotten comfortable with Zoom and actually gotten good at being productive in these meetings. So I think we can do more of these faster than before. So I'm looking forward to more, I hate to say it, more Zoom collaborations, right? Till we can get to be in person meetings to talk about these things.
Adapting us all, yes. And I would actually further say that as from in my current role in manufacturing, that we too need to do a better job of collaborating and selling and informing and advising differently. So not just advising at a bricks and mortar level, but really looking systemically across the whole region and to really do the greatest service and our shared goal to ensure that every day is safer, more secure than the day before. That is something that I too, and we as an organization are trying to learn how to do better as well. So growing towards, collaborating towards each other definitely is a good thing. Do any of you, I think I'm not seeing, I would definitely want to encourage any listeners, callers, comments that you just would like to make to the speakers, to definitely make your voices known. And I've kind of run out of questions and cues, and or just for this panelists themselves, if you have any final thoughts as well. All are open. Steve Dodd said, thanks for this opportunity. Thank you, Steve. Anybody? And Crystal said, huge thanks to my fellow panelists. It's an honor to be in such company. Back at you, Crystal. I'm in on all of you and big fans. So it is my absolute pleasure and honor to be here and with PSU as well. And good things, great things are in store and in the works as we speak. So if there isn't any, oh yeah. So Erica, thank you, Erica says, remember to sign up for today's door prize. And there's a link in that, I'm assuming that's where they all get it as they go into the chat and get a copy of that link. Yes, the answer is yes. I'm not an expert moderator. Will be soon. All right, well, I guess anything else that anyone would like to close? Otherwise, I think it's a wrap, and I think this was an incredible discussion. I got a lot of new methodologies from all of you, and metaphors that are really are things that I can share and pollinate across to other your peers that I talk with, and that's just very beneficial. And communities of practice, I love that. The common thread of workforce development is so profound, which is knowledge. It's people. It's not the technology, it's the people. How do we work collectively together to do that better? So very good. I think I'll call that a wrap. I didn't practice a goodbye, so.
I just want to say thank you to you and Palo Alto, for giving us this opportunity, and all the fellow panelists and listeners out there. This is great, to be able to share information, and I appreciate, any kind of information that anybody, the great questions, it makes me stop and think about different avenues. And this is a battle that will keep continuing to grow on there. So I'm hoping that we can all work together to do our best. And thank you.
Correct. Everybody have a great week. Thanks.
Thanks,
Enjoy your
everyone.
day. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.